This lesson is all about process engineering, the kind of people who are involved and what their job is to do. We go through how a factory works essentially and talk about all the different skills that are involved. We take an example of, say, ketchup production and how that goes from farm to fork, and we talk about how engineers share their ideas and drawings. The first part of this lesson is about the different roles of engineers in process engineering. So we talk about how they work in such varied fields as oil and gas, all the way to food manufacturing. And then specifically we speak about an example of food production and all the different steps that might be involved and what engineers and scientists will be involved in each step. And this is really interactive, so you want to have your slides up and kind of ask the kids for questions and feedback and move on from there. The first step as a process engineer is to design your solution. So we talk about analysis of needs, so what needs to happen, and then trying to do as much as possible with as little as possible. So this is where we introduce the idea of resource efficiency. And so if an object moves from one side of the factory to the other more quickly, it's better, and if we can use less materials to do it, it's better. So when we're speaking about factories and process engineers, one job that they have is to try and make things more efficient. Engineers share their ideas through drawings. One part of today's lesson is about how to use isometric dot paper. So on the slides are some examples of different dimensions you can use. What's important at the start is for the kids to realize that if you draw your first item in the center, not everything will fit. So you as a teacher, it's important to tell them maybe where to start. If we start with something up here that is perhaps 1, 2, 3 units tall, we'll say, it's up to yourself in your class what units you use. So if it's 3 units tall, 1 unit wide, we can start filling in the dots then. So it's back this way. And so we have 3 tall, 1 in breadth and 1 in width. Try some different shapes. So you want to mix it up. The different examples here. So let's try something over here. We can say it is 1, 2, 3, 4 wide. And just pick a number 1, 2, 3 tall. So the trick is to you drew your first line and take the corners and draw up from there. So here's your other corner. 1, 2, 3. Take your corners and draw back from there. So however wide you want it to be. 1, 2 for example. 1, 2. And then you can start joining them all up. That might seem really simple to you and I, but this might be the first time the kids have ever dealt with something like this. So take your time to run through once more. So you pick a starting point. You have, easiest thing I find is your height. So 1, 2 tall. You might pick your breadth from the starting point. Go 1, 2, and so draw up. You know, have your corners. And however deep it is, say 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, where am I off to? There we go. And so now you have your corners again, start matching them up. Simple. So start with the corner up and across, draw your first box, second box, add them all up. There are lots of hints and tricks on the slides, and as you flick through the slide, it runs through an example with the kids. But really important here as a teacher is just move from child to child around the classroom, and some will be flying, let them away. Some will be struggling, give them a little bit of a hand, and hopefully within 5 to 10 minutes, every child will have a couple of images like this. The big activity in this lesson is all about building a sweet factory, and so the analogy we use for a sweet factory is trying to run a marble from one end to the other. So we're talking about taking a marble and having it run through multiple stages. One might be adding food dye, one might be glazing, whatever the kids want to think of it as. and it goes from one stage to the other all the way to the bottom, unassisted ideally. And so we have different materials here. We have our cones, we have straws, pipe cleaners, and this carton here. Your materials don't need to match exactly, and remember you can use materials from the previous lesson in building this if you want. I'm going to try and put something small together here just to give you guys an idea. Leave plenty of time for this activity, because if it goes well it can be thoroughly enjoyable, and if it doesn't go well they'll need lots of help. So either way it's time consuming. I'll put something together now. So this is one here. So I've shown you a couple different examples of what you can do. What's really important is to have a difference in height as you go. So kids have their desks, they can use books, they can use their lunch boxes, whatever. But obviously as it passes from each stage to the next, it should be at a different height. So for example, you can take what I previously showed you and attach it at the end here, and you'll have making different right angles. If kids are struggling, the easiest thing to do is remove the corners and just have it flow from one station to the next, again using the differences in heights. What you can see here is, despite the fact we have the same height cones, if you just shove a bit of foam in here, you can stack them up, get a bit of change in height. Our pipe cleaners are really handy for turning corners, and as with all the lessons, you can use stuff that we previously used to try and expand upon this. So at the end of that lesson, the kids should know about process engineering, how everything is a process, trying to be resource efficient. They should have built one of the little sweet factories here with lots of nice twists and turns. They should be familiar with their isometric paper. If one group finishes early, it would be great for them to try and build it taller and bigger, but another thing might be for them to draw their factory on the isometric paper. As always, the questions for next week can be found in the slides.